Hello and welcome to Luna. Today we're here with dietitian Samantha Haas, and we will be discussing her personal health history and her journey as she was diagnosed with Hashimoto's disease. So before we start, please tell us a little bit about yourself and your career.
Okay, thank you for having me, guys. I'm Samantha Haas. I'm a registered dietitian. I'm the founder of Samantha Haas Nutrition, my new private practice. I'm actually originally born and raised in Miami Beach. I moved to New York for for NYU to go to New York University to study nutrition. I met my husband my first day of NYU actually. Got married in New York and stayed. Yeah, it was crazy. We didn't like start dating day number one, but we dated a few weeks after that and then never broke up and got married. But it's like a fun fact. And anyway, so I went to NYU for their nutrition and dietetics program. I attended New York Presbyterian's dietetic internship, which is Cornell and Columbia. It's a heavily based clinical nutrition program or dietetic internship, which I'm sure a lot of your followers already know what that is, but it's like a residency for becoming a dietitian. I was selected for New York Presbyterian's fellowship program, which I specialized in obstetrics and pediatrics. I did a lot of really cool things in that fellowship program. I worked in a ketogenic pediatric clinic, which was for kids who had seizures, epilepsy.
And I didn't know you worked there. That's awesome.
That's so cool.
It was 6 months, so it was like once a week.
Yeah,
every day was a different clinic I was working in, but it was like a couple of pediatric ones, a couple of obstetric ones, a couple learning about insurance. The part I didn't love to do. No. And it's just a lot of like administrative stuff that, wasn't as interesting. I was an RD at that point because I got my RD right away, right when I, graduated from the internship, but I wanted to do the fellowship because it was a little bit more outpatient. And I was in the hospital for the full year of the dietetic internship. And I loved peds and I loved pregnant women. So I wanted to, get a little bit more time in there. Another like clinic that I did there was called Health for Life, and it was a cool clinic. It was for families that, were lower income and needed support with a dietitian. There was a social worker on the team. There was a couple of fellows, doctor fellows, and there was like a PA coach, someone who was helping with activity. And we would all take turns meeting with these families and helping them figure out a health and wellness plan that, was met their needs and was appropriate for their lifestyles and what they had access to. So that was also really interesting.
That's awesome.
And then I worked in
a lot of pediatric and family stuff.
Yeah. And then there was like an obstetrics clinic. But then once I finished that, I actually joined F Factor, which is a private practice in New York City. I worked there for 6 years. Focused on mainly weight loss, but I did see, a couple of pregnant women or postpartum. I always loved that. So I tried to stay in that field. And I recently started my own private practice, May 2023, that we're in, May 2023, where
Amazing.
I do see clients still for weight loss, but also fertility, whether they're trying to get pregnant, if they're struggling to get pregnant through, through an IVF or IUIs, while they're pregnant, postpartum. I work with peds. My youngest client right now is a 9-year-old, and my oldest client is 77 years old. So a big range of different different types of clients. And then I recently just joined the advisory board of a new practice called Miami Concierge Pediatrics. So it's a new concierge pediatric practice in Miami. So tell all your friends.
Oh my God, amazing. No, me. Okay, great. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, it's amazing. I can send you information. It's brand new. There was one other concierge doctor, pediatric doctor, but he stopped doing house calls. So this is like you pay for a membership, and every membership price is different based on like the family, how many kids,
amazing.
What your
so
kids
you're on
need.
the board now,
and
as
I'm on the
dietitian.
Advisory board. Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's really exciting and new and lots of new things. So
Samantha, I have a question. I have a question
Yeah.
that has nothing to do with nutrition, but you mentioned it. I went to NYU for the same program for nutrition.
Yeah.
Probably a few years later, but where did you meet your husband? Because there was not a single man in my class, not one.
It wasn't in my class. So it's a quick story, but My husband was in a frat, and NYU doesn't really have frats, but they have a frat, API, and he was with my friend Alec Masliak. I don't know, maybe you guys know him because he's also from Miami, and he was helping his friend Andre move into his dorm, and I had just moved into my dorm, and I was like, hey, I'm starving. Like, can we get something? It was undergrad. Like, I was not looking to meet like my husband. Trust
You were
me.
not in the vibe.
I was not. That wasn't where I was. He wanted to meet someone, but and so he's just a year older than me. But he whatever. So he brought his friend. We went to get dinner. We went to get pizza, and it's actually funny. It like says a lot about who I am. But he brought his friend Andre, and I remember we went to like Ziva Pizza, which is like a kind of vegetarian pizza place in New York City that has like very funky slices. So I got, because like this is who I was, the Zen pizza slice, still one of my favorite slices. The one I got, they closed down, but it was the one I got after I gave birth in New York. So it's to my second.
Oh, full circle, like your first day and then your first pizza.
My first, I felt that way, but it's called the Zen. It has like pesto and tofu and sun-dried tomatoes and sauteed onions and garlic. And I remember thinking like, not that I was even thinking this guy I was going to date, but like this guy probably thinks I'm so weird. Like Alec already knew me. He knew I liked like healthy and like fun, different foods. And this guy's like probably getting a regular pizza slice, and I'm getting like the one that has pesto, tofu, garlic, sun-dried tomatoes, like basically like this massive meal on like a slice of pizza on like spelt crust. Like it was so funky, but it is really delicious. And they closed down, so I'm sad about it. But anyway, so that's a little bit about me.
I love that. So you also were diagnosed with Hashimoto's disease. So we're gonna get a little bit into that because I think a lot of people don't even know what that is and how it relates to hypothyroidism. So does everybody that has hypothyroidism have to have Hashimoto's, or how does that work? Tell us a little bit about your story. So how and when were you diagnosed, and tell us as detailed as possible. So if maybe someone's listening that is going through the same thing, they're going to be like, oh my God, I'm not alone.
Yeah, it's quite a long journey before my diagnosis. So, and sorry, I speak a lot, so I hope that I don't bore anyone, and I'll try to make it quick. But first of all, no, to answer your question, not everyone with hypothyroid has Hashimoto's, but if you have Hashimoto's, it eventually will lead to hypothyroidism. Not meaning it can be managed, and it might, not get to such a harsh point. I'm definitely not at like I don't think I walk around and people think I have hypothyroid because I'm managing it through lifestyle and through medication. But it was 9th grade is when I started showing symptoms, and senior year of high school is when I was diagnosed. So Hashimoto's is an autoimmune thyroid disorder disease. And so what an autoimmune disease means is that your body attacks one of its own organs because it thinks it's like the enemy. It thinks it's like a virus or bacteria, so it attacks it. So with Hashimoto's, your body thinks that your thyroid is the enemy, so it attacks it, and eventually it attacks it enough that it kills it. And the thyroid is so important for so many different bodily functions. So whether it's our metabolism, our body temperature regulation, how our heart and nerves function, it manages, it has to do with our digestive system. I won't say it manages it, but our digestive system is closely linked to our thyroid. Our thyroid is actually one of the major sites of vitamin D like absorption or metabolism. So if you like have a thyroid issue, you might be vitamin D deficient. So, in short, the thyroid is so important to our health. It's an organ that's in our endocrine system, so our hormone system. So we need it for a lot of different things that you would think when you think hormones. It regulates our menstrual cycle. So I'll go through some of the symptoms. I'll tell you what I was experiencing and how, it was actually misdiagnosed, and how finally in senior year it was diagnosed correctly, so like my personal journey. I usually don't talk about myself so much. I interview my clients, so it's funny, but I do share this with them. And if I do have a client who is struggling with losing weight, even though we're trying a lot of different methods, well, first of all, whenever I see a client, I actually make sure that they get blood work. But if they're still struggling, then I'll say, like, you have to go to an endocrinologist and get some more blood work on your thyroid specific. Yeah, because they don't always, first of all, test thyroid function in like your basic panel, right? And if they do, they do.
You ask for it, yeah. I just went to get blood work, and it wasn't in the annual. I was like, I need my full thyroid panel. They're like, why? I was like, because I need it.
Yeah. Well, they don't test most, like, right? I think like the normal blood panels. I mean, there's like a lot of good information.
CMP, and lipid panel.
it's not very, they're not testing most like vitamins, right? Maybe vitamin D and sometimes vitamin B12, but not, not all of them. And vitamin B12 is super important because you're deficient for a long time. It can be like irreversible. So anyway, so I was in ninth grade and I was always like, I'm 5 foot, I'm 5 feet, I'm very small. And I was always like a girl who, and I will say like, I have pretty good genes in my family. Like everyone is pretty fit and in shape. And I was always someone who, was conscious of health and how I ate, but I was in ninth grade. Like I was eating donuts and, like cookies, and my mom's like a baker. So she, not professionally, but she likes to bake. And so we always had like chocolate chip cookies at home. And I really didn't ever think about how I ate and how it impacted. But in ninth grade, like I started to put on a little bit of weight, maybe like 10 to 15 pounds, which for like a 5 foot girl who was always eating whatever she wants,
yeah, you can
it was definitely, noticeable. But that's also the time where like people are going through puberty, right? I got my period probably in eighth grade. So that was like maybe a little bit on the back burner. But what really stood out as a symptom for me, so there was weight gain. Another, which is a normal symptom of Hashimoto's, is or any thyroid, like hypothyroid. So hypothyroid is when your body is not producing enough thyroid. And so your so weight gain, like moderate weight gain, 10 to 15 pounds, but having a hard time losing it is a sign. Another sign is like a puffy face or eyes. I definitely started over time getting a real like puffy cheeks. That's where I felt like all my weight was, like in my cheeks. Irregular menstrual cycle, which again, I was in ninth grade, but I had a very irregular menstrual cycle. I was like bleeding for 6 weeks and then like not getting it for a while. And I only got my period in eighth grade. So a lot of people are like, that's normal. It takes time for your body to adjust.
No, a lot of people that'll get diagnosed with Hashimoto's will be very scared about infertility, and they'll be like, am I not going to be able to have kids? So you now have 2 kids, which you didn't mention, but I'll mention it for you. So no need to be very nervous about that.
Yeah, I will say with my first, and I think that this, and I'll get into it, but my first, I did have some infertility stuff, but it wasn't thyroid related. I kept thinking it was. I was also diagnosed, which I don't have, but PCOS. That was like the diagnosis that they gave me when I went to the OBGYN about my irregular period. And I really think, and this is where I think there's a power in the words, and there's a power in like, especially with young teens, like if I'm told I have PCOS and that's what I think I have my whole life, and then I'm trying to get pregnant, I think that it took, other than the fact that I probably just needed to like reset my body, because with my second, I got pregnant, thank God, like before I even tried right away. My kids are 13 months apart.
It was quick.
I think that there's like a power of our thoughts, and I think I was told that I gonna have an issue getting pregnant, or that I have PCOS, and then thyroid. Like I thought for sure I was gonna have an issue, and then I did. I had to go through a little bit of fertility treatment. So with my second, I got pregnant easily. So it's definitely not like a guarantee. But I think it is important to have your thyroid under control and be monitoring it. And if you are trying to get pregnant, keep checking it.
For sure.
But anyway, so I had irregular menstrual cycle. And then I'm trying to think if there's anything else that really stood out.
Maybe.
I had fatigue. I had fatigue, but like, I think everyone, I don't know, I still feel like I have a little fatigue. I was cold all the time, which I still am, but that could, again, be someone who's like a little bit runs cold. These are things that I felt like when I told my mom, or when we went to the OB, she was like, yeah, you should run to, like, if I want to lose the weight, I should run, and I should eat like salads, and but I have PCOS. She didn't do blood work on me. I was in did blood work. So she just told me I have PCOS because I think her like daughter was just diagnosed with like something like that. Like her daughter was just diagnosed with PCOS. So I have
similar
PCOS,
symptoms.
and that's why my periods are irregular. So here's birth control, go on birth control. That will fix it. And if you want to lose weight, run. Okay, so I took that. Like I didn't know what thyroid disease was. I didn't know what Hashimoto's was. It's not like my mom or my dad or my sister have Hashimoto's.
Oh, they don't. That was my next question, because it is genetic.
I have an uncle. So I have an uncle who has it, but not someone that I would have like asked or known or
thought about.
Right, like to assume that you would have it too, just
yeah. So then it was years. It was years of me trying to now like manage my weight, because it was bothering me, and I felt it was getting worse. Like no matter what I tried, and I wasn't ever trying, to be honest, like so much with diet. I ate like, maybe more protein and more salads, and I was a little bit more conscious, but I was a high schooler. Like I was eating what I wanted.
Yeah, like in a recess, you were eating like cookies or whatever there was.
I was not, like I was not at all restrictive in the way I was eating. I was exercising a lot more, because that's what the OB told me to do. She said run. So I did. I took up running. and it didn't work. I ended up like gaining more weight. I think my cheeks became extremely puffy. Like if you look at my senior year pictures, like graduation pictures, I like can't even, like my cheeks are in my eyes like that. So that at that point, it was like the end of senior year. And I think my sister was struggling. She was struggling. She had like Epstein-Barr virus. She had chronic fatigue, and like she had her own health issues. And so she was told to go to an endocrinologist who tested her for thyroid, and she didn't have it. But then I don't know why but finally, like my mom took me to like that same endocrinologist, did a full panel. I had Hashimoto's, and I was like, are you
Oh my
kidding me?
God.
This whole time, no, but I felt really a lot of relief because it was years and years of me feeling like, okay, like just accepting. I'm not like a
this is
victim
my body.
mentality.
This is it. Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't even complete. I was just like, okay, this is me. I guess like I used to be someone who was like very, small, and now I'm someone who just like is 15 pounds over, is like not really like
just
comfortable
running
in my
every
own
day.
skin, like and trying, but like I guess that's just me. And by the way, at that point, I had already applied to NYU for nutrition, so I had already like loved nutrition and cared
But
about it.
did going through all of this bring you to want to study nutrition, or how did you
So,
get into
so
it?
for sure, because I was before ninth grade, I didn't care about nutrition. But then as the years went on, I started running a little bit more. I started caring about nutrition. I was like I remember I would bring in like the like healthy corn muffins to school. Like muffins are always my go-to still on my Instagram. You'll see I have 1,000 muffin recipes, healthy corn muffins and like healthy, baked goods. And I would always try, but I had like no real nutrition like knowledge to understand how much I'm supposed to be eating. And I had no portion size control. I'm a big eater. I love to eat. I really do. So like that was probably part of the problem. But once I got the diagnosis, I was then followed up very closely. I want to say every 3 weeks I was getting blood work, and they gave me Synthroid, a small dose. It wasn't like my thyroid was totally out of control, but I was definitely showing symptoms. Once I started taking the Synthroid, I then was able to like manage my weight. It kind of came a little bit more natural, but there was other symptoms that were still off. Well, first of all, my period was managed from birth control. So I never know if that was like, if I would have like got off birth control and just, I wasn't going to get off birth control at that point, but in senior year. But I think like it was managing that. One of the symptoms of Hashimoto's is constipation. And I definitely struggled with that. So that was something that once I was in NYU, so I feel I'm skipping some steps, but basically what happened was I got inspired by like my diagnosis of Hashimoto's to study nutrition. When I was applying to college, I really wanted to apply to somewhere that had a major that I was interested in, not just like apply to a college, but really feel like I have a path. And my dad always said, like, you need to choose a career. You need to study something that you're interested in. Like, if you're not interested in finance or business, don't do it. Like, if you're not interested in, I don't know, I'm interested in psychology, so I'm just going to think of another one. But if you're not interested in like art, don't study it. If you study something that you love, like he's a financial advisor, he loves to talk to people, he's like a schmoozer, it's like his thing. Yeah. He loves it and he loves his job. So I was like looking at these majors and I saw there was nutrition and dietetics. And I'm like, perfect, amazing. I get to study nutrition and diet. I get to study nutrition. Like I didn't even know what a registered dietitian was at that point. I just thought I was studying nutrition. Like I hadn't seen a dietitian. And so I applied to NYU, got into their program, did that program. And then I was still struggling with like constipation. And I still felt like, yes, the Synthroid and healthy eating and exercise was helping me like manage, but I didn't feel like I had really yet. I was still studying nutrition. I didn't feel like I had a solid, like, hold of things. So I went to a dietitian and I told her I had Hashimoto's and I told her I was like struggling with this like constipation. It was just like, my stomach was a little bit off all the time. I talk about constipation all the time. It doesn't even faze me to be like saying this, being interviewed and talking about it. And so she said, with Hashimoto's, you should be on a gluten-free diet, which I don't prescribe gluten-free diets for all my clients who have Hashimoto's, but she said I should. So I'm like, I listen when someone tells me something, I listen, right? Especially I was like in school, I'm like, okay, I guess I have to be gluten-free. So I was gluten-free for probably a year and a half until I went to Florence. I went abroad to Florence. I'm like, I'm not doing this in Florence. Like, there's no way I'm not eating pasta. Like, I can't. So I went to Florence and I broke my gluten-free and I was actually fine. I didn't feel like it made such a difference.
Did you feel better when you did gluten-free though for that year and a half?
It did help me in the beginning. It did help me in the beginning with the constipation. Yeah. But I'll say what really helped me was as I like graduated and started practicing was really just eating regular, balanced, high fiber carbs, lean proteins, healthy fats in moderation, with exercise, with getting adequate good sleep, with like dealing with stress levels, right? Like I also had like bad acid reflux at one point in my life that was definitely stress related. Like I took care of myself. I did like the basics, drink a lot of water. When I have a client who comes to me now with Hashimoto's or any sort of thyroid issue, they usually come, not always, but they come saying like, do I need to be gluten free? Do I need to be dairy free? Do I need to cut out cruciferous vegetables? I'm not saying that it can't be, you know, a type of diet for certain clients. And I think that if my client was totally out of control and they couldn't get their thyroid under control and they were getting, yeah, of course I would put them on like a gluten-free, dairy-free to start and see if that helps, right? There is some research that shows that it could benefit them, and that's less inflammation, better for, you know, celiac disease is also specifically gluten is related to Hashimoto's. But just to be on it, to like manage symptoms first, like my first, you know, takeaway would be first trying to eat just like a balanced, healthy diet of high fiber carbs if you're struggling with constipation for sure, and just good for gut health. Lean protein, healthy fat, lots of vegetables, lots of fruit, practice portion control, get good sleep. I say 8 hours a night. It's like the basics, right? Drink lots of water and manage stress, which I think a lot of people need help on, right?
Yeah.
And it's not just like
seeing
a therapist. It's it's like dealing with emotions, figuring out like, you know, where these are coming from and what are some coping skills. That's not like eating, which was my coping skill for sure, was like eating. So yeah, that's how I was diagnosed. Some symptoms, other symptoms that I didn't necessarily show was like dry skin, dry hair. I don't feel like that was something
nails.
that wasn't something I noticed so much, but definitely the constipation, the puffy face, the weight gain, the irregular periods, the feeling cold. Those are things, but again, to say like, those are also for a ninth grader who is a girl, like who's in school wearing her jacket because it's cold in school, or like irregular menstrual cycle because you're young and it takes time, or weight gain because like maybe my metabolism is just catching up to me. Like, right? It's hard to really know. And I think that's why it was misdiagnosed. And I think I'm so grateful that whatever happened, that I ended up going to see this endocrinologist. I think I really was like, it would just be getting worse and worse and not being, you know, taken care of. And maybe I would have noticed as I got older, but I'm grateful for catching it when I did. It's also not common in like high school girls. It's more common. It's definitely common in women. And I want to say the number is like 5% of Americans have Hashimoto's. So it's not like it's totally this rare disease, but more women have it. And it's usually between 30 and 50 years old. So often people who are like going through menopause, so like closer to 50, they think that they're gaining weight because of menopause, but it could be thyroid also.
I love that you mentioned the weight part, because I see a lot of patients that are so quick to say that it's their thyroid, right? Like, I'm gaining weight, it's my thyroid. And even if you do have Hashimoto's, like just as you said, in your senior year pictures, you were like very bloated and very puffy, and you now are not like that. So I think it's very interesting and very important for people to know that even if you do have a diagnosis like this, it doesn't mean like, let me just not try. Like, I already have a Hashimoto, I already have a thyroid situation, like it's an enlarged thyroid, whatever it is, it's not working properly. So anything I do is just not going to work. And obviously I think there like medication comes into play, of course. And we can talk about supplements if you take or recommend any supplements, but I think it's important to know that even if you have a diagnosis like this, you can still reach a goal weight that you are happy with. You can still live a life that you're fulfilled with. You can still have kids and be fertile. So yeah. Do you have any supplements, or you already spoke about diet? So high fiber carbs.
So what I do, I just take Synthroid, 75 micrograms. It's not even a lot, every single day. I say, everyone says that you need to wait like an hour. You take it, drink water, don't have coffee, don't eat anything that like messes with absorption. Everything else, I don't take any supplements, but I would, there are like many micronutrients that are super important, but the big ones are selenium, iodine, iron, zinc, vitamin D and vitamin B12. There's like a higher risk of deficiency. So if I like was deficient in any of those, absolutely I would be taking them, but I'm not. Most people are not testing like iodine to see if they're deficient. It's like a urine test. You're not testing it, but it's crucial. So what I do for clients, and I was talking to you guys about this before, but the dietary recall is so important to make sure that you are meeting all of your like micronutrient needs and getting in like, you know, various foods that have these different micronutrients. So like selenium, like the classic ones, Brazil nuts are super high in, you know, everyone knows like have 1 or 2 Brazil nuts, right? Iodine actually is the best.
That's a hard one
like
because
seaweed kelp though, like any of those type of things.
salt.
So if you have right, iodized salt is a big one, but you also don't want people consuming so much salt,
course.
right? So
yeah, like
but I think like the best one is getting like if you like sushi or if you like seaweed salads or like they make kelp noodles, like that's just like a fun one that I actually do include regularly in my diet.
You can also have too much iodine.
The kelp noodles. They're so great. You're like you soak them in like baking powder and lemon juice. But you can have too much. So you want to be careful with supplementation. Like you don't want to supplement with iodine. It's not something that you want to be doing. The other ones, they do have these like thyroid support supplements that you could take if you felt like, again, it was out of control and you weren't managing it. But I really have rarely worked with someone whose thyroid is out of control and they're following like a healthy diet and like lifestyle and taking Synthroid.
I think the Synthroid is
irreversible. It's you cannot take Synthroid. You don't have to. I like that I'm only on 75 micrograms. But it only, by the way, I think I was on 50. Like I think it only went up a little bit because during pregnancy and after pregnancy, like your thyroid gets a little bit off. So that's a really important time to be checking thyroid is pregnancy, because there's risk for the baby. But I feel with my like diet and lifestyle that I manage it so it doesn't get worse. But so if you do that, then the goal is to like try to take the minimal amount, but you usually have to take something. I
recently had someone call me for thyroid and they're like, I went to the endocrinologist and he wants to put me on Synthroid. I'm not taking Synthroid. I'm like, you have to take Synthroid. They're like, there has to be a natural herb that acts like Synthroid. I'm like, you're watching too much TikTok. There's nothing that acts like a medication. Like berberine acts like metformin. Like there can be a million studies. If you need to be on Synthroid, you're going on Synthroid. I'm so sorry.
I think as long as it comes with those changes in your lifestyle, like, you know, just not only depending on it.
I think that you have to change your lifestyle, right? Because even I took this Synthroid, it helped maybe with a little bit easier with the weight management, but it didn't like cure all my symptoms, right? I think it's just managing it, but it's not. And again, there's no total cure, but you manage it even better if you're changing your lifestyle. So I think it's the 100%. Most important thing to do.
100%. And so from concluding from all of this, I think I would say everyone go get a blood work today.
I had a thyroid
full panel.
Full panel today. And don't jump to just eliminating random things from your diet. I think number one, like just because online you can see that something can help, it doesn't mean it's your case. And most of the times I think people first need to adapt their lifestyle and like make little changes instead of changing their entire diet.
Yeah. Sure. And I think that's why it's so important to work with a dietitian, right? Because I think that there's so much you can see on TikTok. There's so many like podcasts that you listen to on Spotify that who even knows who's running these podcasts, who knows what they're saying. And like a lot of them are like eliminate gluten and I'm not, again, like I did it for a year, but I don't need to be on it forever. And maybe at another point in my life, I might have to start that again, but it's not, you don't want to eliminate all of these things from your lifestyle, make the diagnosis more miserable than it needs to be, right? I don't consider myself, again, like this like victim of Hashimoto's and that like, oh my God, so maybe it means I have to like take medication every day and I have to wait an hour before my coffee, fine. Maybe it means like I'm more mindful, but everyone should be mindful of how they eat and how they exercise, and how they take care of themselves, whether it's a Hashimoto's diagnosis or not. And for me, it's something that helps me, I think, relate to my clients, right? Like I get it. I wish that we could all do and eat and act however we want without any consequences, but we can't. So I'm not going to like, you know, just be like, fine, whatever, screw it. I don't care. And I'm just going to like live a decrepit lifestyle because I like, will, you know, feel good. I'm going to just do my best to live my best life and feel my best and not let like the diagnosis really change that for me. And if anything, I think it inspired me to take control of my health. And I think that for anyone else who is like just diagnosed or is thinking that they might have it, like think about it like that. It was an answer. I was struggling with this stuff. I got this answer and I used it to do good for myself. And that goes for like any diagnosis, any autoimmune disease, any like, you know, any PCOS, anything that you might be struggling with.
PCOS is huge. People get really nervous about that. When they're like, oh my God.
I also know a lot of dietitians that got into dietetics because of like being diagnosed with PCOS.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a big one. It's common, right? And I think I was diagnosed with it at one point. And so, yeah, I'm happy that I don't have like two. I don't have PCOS and Hashimoto's, but I think like you take what you get and you roll with it. You make the best of it.
100%. Amazing. So now you have your own practice. I'm so happy that you opened that. And I hope that everything is going to be amazing with that. Tell us a little bit about your private practice, who you like to see most, or you already said that you see all ages. Hype yourself up so people know where we can find you on social and how we can work with you.
Yeah. So I just started my private practice in May. I see who I like to see. I like to see everyone. I don't like to turn people away, but where I'm like specializing is pediatrics, fertility, nutrition, prenatal, postnatal. I'm trying to do more like women in the life cycle, right? So anywhere from getting pregnant to having babies, to even helping with like baby-led weaning if they need it, with breastfeeding.
That's so cool.
It's like the stage that I'm in, and I like to do the stage I'm in, right?
I love that. It's same stage that I'm
in,
so I love it.
Because then I relate to it better. I'm learning for myself as well, and it's like my own tips and tricks that really come from like experience. And then, but I work obviously with male clients as well. I have, you know, a number of male clients, and I really enjoy working with that population. And peds is like, you know, anywhere from my kid broke a bone, what like can you know, what can you help me with in terms of supplementation or what they should be eating? I have a picky eater, or, you know, whatever it might be. Where I'm based in New York City, I'm virtual for the most part right now. So I do see clients all over. It's not just in New York City. But I have clients all over the world. My social is Samantha Haas RD. Haas is spelled HASS. I think that's one of the bigger.
Yeah, we'll leave it in the show notes anyways.
Yeah, we're gonna write it down so that people can DM
thank you so much for coming on. You were amazing, and I hope this is gonna help so much for anyone going through.
And we'd love to have you back for fertility and pediatric, and we'll talk about so many other topics because I'm sure you know so much about all of those.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. This was so much fun.
Thank you for
I really
coming
appreciate
on.
it.